name is Lynn McEntee. Welcome to the Afro-Caribbean Cultural Festival hosted by the Moksha Canada Foundation. I'm honored to be here for a second year, really quite humbled actually, and a part of the conversation moving forward. This is our third panel discussion. We've just been excited. We had amazing guests over the past couple of weeks, and we're delighted to have other amazing guests join us today. It is our third panel discussion. We are talking about lived experience then and now. And again, it's the Afro-Caribbean Cultural Festival. I wanted to do a shout out to Moksha Canada Foundation, but in particular the founder, Sunil Channon. We wouldn't be here without him. So thank you to Sunil Channon. Thank you to Moksha Canada Foundation, all of our community members and participants. Moksha Canada Foundation is about connecting, engaging, and empowering our communities. And that's what we're about today, is raising the conversation and seeing where it takes us. Join us in thought and join us in conversation. Again, my name is Lynn McEntee. I'm your moderator for today, and we'll pick up the conversation with our great guest today. I'd love to introduce, if you don't mind, Alicia, I'm going to introduce Constable Boyd, and I'll just read out a little bit of his bio, please, and thank you. Awesome. All right, so we have Police Constable Lincoln Boyd, and he's from the York Regional Police Diversity and Cultural Resources Unit. And I'm just reading from his perspective. I've been a police officer with York Regional Police since 2005. I've been fortunate to work in a number of areas. I started, like all new officers, working frontline patrol, community-oriented response, uniform recruiting, criminal investigations, Bureau and Diversity and Cultural Resources Unit. I chose to work in policing in order to serve the citizens the best way I know how. Choosing this career path with York Regional Police has been very satisfying and has been one of my best decisions I have made. I knew from an early age that policing was the job that I wanted to do. It has been a very fulfilling career. And as a one-line bio for Lincoln Constable, policing for me has been a very rewarding, and there's no other career like this. So I wanted to welcome you, Constable Boyd. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. I think we'll start out the conversation with you, but would you mind if I just read Melisia's bio so our viewers and listeners today will get a sense of who our guests are?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Melisia, thank you so much also for joining us. Delighted. So I'm just going to get to your bio, which is quite lengthy as well. Melisia is a seasoned public servant, radio host, and podcaster. Melisia earned her double major BA in Sociology and Communication Studies from York University. Melisia has and continues to be a volunteer volunteer her time behind the scenes to help numerous nonprofit orgs, helping those in need. Melisia has been a public servant with the province for 16 years and has served over 17 years in radio music with her experience. Oh my goodness. Wow, a woman of substance, Melisia has cemented her legacy as an innovator with a cause. Wow, yes. Thank you also for joining us today.
Thank you. I know the years doesn't look the way I look, but I'm there.
I love that. Yeah, that's just amazing. Yeah, young in spirit always, right?
Yes, always.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for allowing me to introduce our guest today. We'll pick up the conversation with lived experience then and now. I did issue a few questions, somewhat generically, but not really, to Constable Boyd, where he can kind of let it flow where he wishes. And I'll just introduce a couple of them at this time, and then we can go from there. So to Constable Boyd, what is the York Regional Police doing to build bridges and develop partnerships with our diverse communities? And then I'll just skip to the next one so our viewers can kind of get a sense and you can flow with your conversation. What are some of the current challenges and future recommendations for education, not only for its members, but the benefit of the overall population?
Okay, so to start with building bridges, we as an organization, we are community focused. We're community focused, and it's a part of our business plan where we engage with our public, and we have various community partners that we do speaking engagements with, and as well we do outreach. Not prior to the pandemic, of course. This was in-person visits where we would go out and we go to churches, mosques, synagogues, schools. But for right now, because of the pandemic, we're limited in that capacity. So most of what we do are through the Zoom platforms and Skype or any other virtual means. We have workshops where we present to various different communities, and our office, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Unit, is one that speaks to all different areas of York Region. York Regional Police, and York Region itself is very diverse. So we have to make sure that we have the capacity to speak to all the members of the region. Just in recent weeks, we had, we share the office with the hate crime unit. This is where we work. So diversity is on one level, hate crime, but we're all under the same umbrella. And last, the 20th to the 23rd of September, we presented at our headquarters in Aurora, a hate crime conference where we invited people from different police services and from different places of worship and communities to speak at the hate crime conference, to share their experiences and to just focus on what they're doing in order to combat hate and hate bias incidents. This was kicked off with our executive command team, with our chief, and even the mayor of Aurora was present. And as such, there was a panel discussion with our executive team, and it went into presentations from the various partners. We also had all members of York Regional Police, so frontline officers, so officers that are on the road that tend to everyday radio calls. We also have the dispatchers and the communications members that take the calls. We then also have the members of the Criminal Investigation Bureau that investigates these type of incidents. And everybody was there just to kind of learn what global community we serve and how best we can work as a cohesive unit. Coming up on November 9th and 10th, we'll be hosting, and we as York Regional Police will be hosting a diversity summit. And again, we have, this is hosted by York Regional Police at our headquarters again, and we'll be having members from all the Ontario police forces that could offer to send the members. So we have members as far as from London all the way down to, we have Halton, and we have everybody in the spectrum of policing that are gonna come to us because we are kind of an innovator when it comes to diversity. And so people are coming to learn from us. We will put that two-day summit on just to kind of educate members of other police services as to what York Regional Police is doing and to learn from them as well to see how we can maybe better our practices and move on and try to help the members of our community that we serve. Going through and talking about recommendations, again, we work and diversity, we adapt a concept of policing with a global mindset. And just, you know, in the closed caption, it says, what happens around the world affects us here. Because we're such a diverse community, world events, local impact. And again, the other way around, it could be locally what happens here. Just going back to a couple of months ago, the unfortunate situation in London with the pickup truck running over the family. I mean, that went right across the world. So it's not only that what happens across the world affects us, it local to global. With the new influx of Afghanistan refugee arrivals, there's a vast majority that are relocating in York region. As such, we have to make sure that we get all these folks acclimated to society, like something that it's far from anything that they're used to. So we put on workshops and just even, getting drives like food drives and clothing drives just to get the basic necessities to make sure that they feel welcomed. And we will be putting on presentations again, just to, from a law enforcement perspective, what is to be expected coming from a region, as such, where the police aren't trusted. And unfortunately, people come from a different area in the world. Police is always looked on as, oh, they, we say and you do, but we want to make sure that coming in, integrating them into society and make sure that they know what are the steps and what is needed. And we put on workshop, and it's as simple as teaching them about safety, winter safety driving, putting on fraud presentations just to know what to expect. So when that phone rings and it says you're going to be arrested because you owe Revenue Canada, to not give people your information, that kind of thing. So we continue to put on those presentations so that people can understand. We also educate our frontline. So the cadets that come back from the Ontario Police College, so brand new, before they get onto the road, we want to make sure that they know what it is that they're dealing with as it relates to diversity. And we put on presentations so that they know, and it's very interactive, they get to ask questions, and we support and supply them with the information. And we always end off by saying, this is our unit's information. Feel free to contact us, because we'll always make sure that if you have any kind of doubt before you go to a certain call, and once you've done the call, you can always come back and we'll provide that information. So we continue to just educate people as to what is there, because again, we have police officers from all over. You'll have police officers from, let's say, North Bay that maybe relocate to the GTA, and in North Bay, you're not going to have the diversity, not even close to what we have down here in the South End. So it's some of the principles that we have to maintain when we got to be culturally aware. So when we go to somebody's house, and for example, we can't just think, okay, it's carte blanche and one thing fits every situation. We have to make sure we're mindful that we are not overstepping. Yes, we're police and we have a job to do, but at the same time, we have to be respectful of everybody that we encounter. So I'll leave it there for now, and we'll continue the chat as we go.
I just have a question to ask. So the workshops that you guys are, that you started with the community, have you noticed a difference, like in regards to the relationship between, the individuals and the police, or is it still a work in progress? Because I'm curious to know.
You know what? I'll give you an example where, let's say, for instance, right, hate crime. Hate crime is one of the most underreported type of incidents that we have as police officers. Since we've been going out, or the hate crime unit has been going out, we've gone, spoken to the parades with the officers on the road, and with the workshops that we're doing, we find that now people are more open to come out and say, hey, this is what happened, and I'm no longer afraid. Now, there's still a little bit of skepticism, because people think that, if they report, there'll be retribution, or the police won't take them seriously because maybe where they came from, reporting a crime, sometimes, it's get out of my station kind of thing. So we see that it's changing. Now it's slow, but we can only encourage and continue to put on these presentations and encourage people to say, listen, if it happens, talk about it. We're here as a police service to investigate, arrest and charge if appropriate, but we need to get because we won't know if you don't report it. So yes, we could see a little bit of a difference and a change.
Thank you for asking that question, Malaysia. It's interesting because working in newcomer programs, even just as what you're talking about, we would invite the police in and such, and all these services that were accessible, because as you mentioned, people coming from other places where perhaps the police weren't necessarily as trusted. So I personally, in the community, I see it has evolved, and I hear that in your voice when you're talking about the programs making a difference. And it has to start somewhere. And I even noticed it evolve even over a decade, even 15 years ago to this point today, because there are very individual, very different needs for each community. And the initiative actually started nationally, I believe. And that's when we started to pay attention, like, oh, okay, we need to start doing these support services within our communities and really getting real with what the needs are, even translation services and such and all those other things. So it's interesting. Oh, yeah, you wanted to intercept? It's interesting to hear you talk about that today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it gives us hope, right? That what we're doing is making a difference. So it gives us hope and encouragement to continue. As a young man, I grew up in Jane and Finch. Now, Jane and Finch is notorious for being, this type of community that everybody kind of looks down on. And the police, it wasn't as friendly as, we didn't have police officers coming and saying, hey guys, hey, let's have a quick little, people didn't want to talk to the police, right? So seeing that and lived it, and now being on the other side of it, where I go in and I fully expect some people to be apprehensive, about talking to police, but it's a dialogue that once you start and once you come in, you say, listen, guys, it's not all about arresting and ticketing and taking people to jail and, so on and so, because that is a part of the job. But unfortunately, that's what a lot of people just see police as. But no, I can be driving and seeing a couple of youth playing basketball. And as a player, person that played basketball, in the past, I'll go out and I'll say, hey, 2 against 2, and we'll just shoot around and just kind of bridge that little gap between the youth. So they see us not as just authority, but they see us as a friend. And we say, listen, if you see something and if you need us, first of all, we're going to be there. So we've developed those contacts and those trust between the youth, because it starts from the youth.
Mm-hmm, and it certainly does. Yeah, thanks, Malaysia. The evolution of that and evolution of thought, really, it does start from the youth. It has to begin somewhere, and you're hoping to make change. And the earlier we address, life and living and humanity, the better that is. Sorry, Malaysia, you were going to say. So
I was going to say, I was going to ask, based on your experience as a child with living in Jane and Finch and dealing with the police. So what made you decide that this was the career goal that you wanted to go to? Because I always hear oh, I never want to be a police based on my experience. So what changed? How did you decide that this is something that you wanted to do, moving forward as an adult?
And it was something that, like you said, people said, oh, yeah, absolutely. And I've gone to, we set up at malls before when I was in recruiting, and we would try to speak to people. People would kind of give us kind of the cut eye and walk away. And we would say, okay, we get it. But for everyone that gave us that cut eye, we had 5 that would say, okay, let's listen to what you have to say. For me, it was, and there are times when I would be, just coming out of my house to go and play basketball, like I talked about, when I was a younger person, I played a lot of basketball. So it was getting my gym bag over my shoulder, my hoodie, of course, right? And I'm going to my car. And then in the area that I lived, we had little little paved areas where police would come in there, and all of a sudden I go to my car and there's a spotlight right in my face. And I don't know if you've ever seen one of those things. They light you up pretty good. I mean, it's almost like a flash blind, right? It's that bright. And I remember just shaking my head like, why? So I was under the impression, again, oh, why? I'm just going to play ball, right? You see my gym bag, and I'm coming out of my house. It's not that I'm going into the building, I'm coming out of my house and I just let it go. And my thought process was, I wanted to be on that side, but I wanted to be one of the guys in uniform that was approachable. Because back then it was kind of an us against them, right? And I didn't want it to be that way. So I said, if I was fortunate enough to compete for the position, which it's a very competitive field to get into, but if I was able to be fortunate enough to get in there, I was going to make sure that I was going to be that difference. So I was going to be the guy that says, you know what? Hey guys, let's kick around the soccer ball. Hey guys, anything happening? You could talk to me. And I'm not saying, for you to, because, in the community it would be, oh, I'm not going to be a snitch, right? But I would put it to people like this. How would you feel if something happened to you or to one of your loved ones and somebody knew something but didn't say? And you could see the wheel kind of turn, and then, you would get, and again, my job for 2.5, almost 3 years was to recruit people. And I sat them down and I told them my experiences so that they knew that, and they looked at me like, oh, you're from Gin and Finch? I'm like, right in the heart of it. I said, when I grew up, unfortunately, it was the time of the crack epidemic, right? Where crack cocaine was the thing, was the new drug. And I would walk and pass people that were just coming, just getting high. And these were people that I knew, like maybe a little older than me. And people would, I'd see them and I'd shake my head. But I said, not only didn't I wasn't a part of it, I didn't want to be a part of it, but I wanted to make sure that moving forward, I could teach kids and show them that, yes, I've seen it and I've lived that experience. So I wouldn't want you to make the same decision or bad decision that I've seen other people make. So that was my perspective of becoming a police officer, wanting to be that other person instead of the one that didn't trust police.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. How have you seen it evolve then, just over that period of time from when you were youth in terms of accessibility and police acceptance? Let's even just say in the Jane and Finch, how is it evolving? Yeah, it's always a work in progress, right?
It is a work in progress, absolutely. But I find now people are more, and we would go, like I said, we'd go to malls, we'd go to like Humber College, for instance, and we would do our one of our workshops where it's kind of like a trade show, but we had all different, we had, Go Transit, we had special constables with the courts, we had Toronto Police, Peel Police, everybody, in this environment. And we would have, and of course we had good swag. So, it kind of draws people, right? Once you have, the nice giveaways, people would come and would say, hey, as long as you're here for the swag, and then we just kind of make a joke out of it. But people would engage. And these are people that before in Jane and Finch, the police officer, would drive by and go, hey, can I get a second? And they would just kind of, no, don't talk to me kind of thing, right? Because it was that mistrust, right? Because they might have seen as young people where the police came because there was a domestic, say, at their house, and dad was being taken away, right? So they had that, oh, no, you kind of are the one that took my dad to jail. And now my dad has a record or whatever. So that was the situation then. It's slowly evolving, and we can only continue to show people that we are not just there to be, yes, there's an element of, somebody breaks the law, we gotta come in and do, and, somebody speeds or, they're using their cell phones or whatever. And when I was on the road, I mean, I gave my share of tickets, but I also gave my fair share of warnings, right? And matter of fact, it's not just giving somebody a ticket because that's a part of the job, and we have to answer. And I would give somebody a ticket, and a couple of months down the road, another officer would stop that person, and for whatever reason, for whatever infraction, and they would say, the last officer I dealt with was Boyd, and yeah, he gave me a ticket, but he was so professional and friendly. And that's what my takeaway was, the fact that even though he understood or she understood that I had to give that ticket, it was also done out of respect, because I can't say you need to respect the police if I can't show respect for you.
No, when I just look at that sort of over the period of the time, let's even just look at the sort of the later 80s, early 90s, and we're talking about those decades. I personally feel that there might have been a closer relationship with the police, and what you're talking about, that just sort of showing up and doing the playing ball and whichever. I think that it's we're trying to work our way back to that again, because we've got so many things coming at us in society. But I loved seeing that. It's just so human, actually, to see that connection, that understanding between not only communities, but across culturally, interculturally, right? So it's beautiful when it unfolds. It's beautiful when people engage. It's beautiful when communities engage, and that the welcome arms are there, so that you can do that in your profession as well. So it's a bit of a shift. I feel like we're kind of, going back and forth teeter-totter like, but in the same sense, I do sense a hope that there is a sense of moving forward, perhaps.
Absolutely. And we want to hear the negative. We want to hear when people aren't satisfied, because we know that there's lots of room for improvement. So we can't just sit there and go, oh yeah, we're doing this, we're doing that, and we don't hear back. So yes, tell us that you appreciate what we're doing, that you welcome. But if there's something that still kind of bugs you, talk about it. Just say, hey, I still think that we need to talk and work on this, and we're always going to be open, at least the people that I work with anyways.
Mm-hmm. And the optics of being present in the community, right? Engaging at the mosque, having workshops, having conversations that are uncomfortable and also comfortable, which is okay too as well. It's a part of the learning and growing together, and the necessity of the richness of our communities, right? Yeah. And
the Welcome Center is, we work with all the Welcome Centers in York Region, and it's, again, we would go out, and now I've only been in the unit. I did a comment in early spring, so May and June. I was there, and then I went back, and I really liked the work. So I applied for the position, competed, and I got the position because this is where I wanted to be. Like, it's very rewarding being in recruiting, don't get me wrong, because we hire the next generation, and we were very minority based, right? We wanted to, and in the head of recruiting right now, we have the deputy chief is a Portuguese male. Our superintendent is Vietnamese Canadian. Our inspector is of Caribbean descent. So it's going down the line. One of the two sergeants is male Black. So the focus, and it's just not just because we have those people in there, but no, the organization, we want to make sure that we hire to match the population. So we do focus on diversity, even when we bring people in for interviews and for any part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Any questions at this point? And we have Atala join us as well, but I wonder if there's any questions right now, Malaysia, for Constable Boyd.
No, not right now.
Right. May I just address how important it is to get into the schools as early as possible and get that message across to our young people, and in turn perhaps take that home as well in some regard.
we do have the school resources officers, and even from before high school, we do have officers that go in at the elementary level. And, you know, they'll be known as like Officer Tony and Officer Matt. And it's no longer, you know, the feeling of the, oh, it's got to be formal and say, Constable this, it's Officer Lincoln, you know, so it just gives you a more of a human feel, right? And we start from there, and you know, it's just little things like that, and then right into high school. Now, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it's a little bit. I know over the winter, like say from March down, we couldn't really necessarily because there were no schools, but there we have like the community safety village, where we had academies for students that were grade 10 to 12, and they would take them and just do all sorts of different things with them. Now, we even went there and presented our recruiting presentation for them. So we always did that. We always made sure that we were in the schools, and just to kind of get people familiar and try to, you know, because when you're in the schools, and it's not necessarily that we want to go there and disrupt kids getting their education, but no, it's just to have more of a friendly approach. And unfortunately, the schools, because there's so many students, things happen, and we need to know that students can come to police when something is not going right, just to kind of say, hey, by the way, and police officers could just then say, all right, you know what, let me go and just speak with somebody privately and just kind of head something off before it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
So how do you guys, as like, you know, when you guys are having these relationships with the younger generation, and, you know, now social media is popular, and what we see on social media is about police officers, majority of the time is negative, right? So how are you guys going to change that, you know, that type of messaging that, you know, these kids see? Because now they're going to be saying, okay, you know, my parents or my cousins or my brothers have bad relationships with police. And then when I go on Instagram, you know, even though I don't live in the States, I see, you know, a police officer, you know, having like the violent act with that. So how would you guys be able to change that dialogue? Because I find that it's going to be very hard, especially with the younger generation, because social media is everything, and everything we see, or I'm not even I'm not young, but you know what I mean? Like, how do you guys plan on changing that dialogue? Are you guys like posting things too, maybe something positive so that the kids could see? Because technically, majority of the time, like no one's going to really see the back end of all the things that you guys are doing, right?
True enough, and you're 100% right when it comes to what's being posted and what is there to be seen. And yes, it's negative, because me myself, like I don't post, but I do like to sometimes go on Facebook, and I don't go on the Instagram or the other, but Facebook and sometimes some of the things that I see, I'll watch, right? And I do not condone it by any means. And for a police officer watching this, and I'm disgusted, I can only, you know, imagine what somebody else seeing it. Like you said, you know, it's out there, and this is what the youth are seeing. And because every youth from 10 has, you know, a cell phone, or they're equipped to go on social media, and it is very unsettling. But at the same time, we know that we have to continue working even twice as hard. Now, yes, we do have York Regional Police. We do have the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have all of that, and we post, and we, you know, try to educate and enlighten and make it fun. But unfortunately, if you were to speak to 10 youth, they would never even go on there. Like we've even had where we've had like make fun, like, you know, see some, we read, and we read some of the like officers would, even that we had the chief that the chief that left, Eric Jolliffe, we even had him read some of the things that they would say about police officers. And, it's like the jokes, right? The donuts and the pigs and whatever. And they would read them and just kind of, just to make fun of ourselves, right? But unfortunately, the kids aren't going to social media to view what we have, right? What positive we have. It's the negative. And yes, it does affect me when I see them. Sometimes I almost want to just not go on just because I see them, but I want to go on because I want to see, because if somebody was to say, oh, this happened somewhere in the States, I want to make sure that I know that, yes, I can speak to it because, yes, I also saw it. Or, we have officers that would say, oh, hey, did you see this, right? Or just share the video, and we want to see it because I'm not saying that, unfortunately, things doesn't happen here. Of course it does, right? It's when you're dealing with, sometimes you have people, unfortunately, that they respond to calls, and they're here, right? And we always tell people, try to be low key, like try to it's better to go from here and bring it up. Because if you come in from here, there's nowhere to go, right? You're already here. So if you're already here, then you're just gonna, unfortunately, lose your cool. And then that is what's being captured, right? So, and we have at the same time, we'll say, as a police officer, I've been on for 16 years, and there's, people on the road that have been on even longer than myself. And if I'm, one of the patrol officers that are out there, and I see that somebody's already there, I'll pull them back and say, hey, why don't you just kind of sit this one out a little bit, or take a break? Let me deal with this. Just because you need to have that person in their ear just saying, hold on, I don't think you're the best equipped right now to handle this. Because you could see what's going to happen, right? So you just pull them back, just a little nudge, pull them back, say, hey, let me deal with this. Or, hey, let me talk for a second, hey, Johnson or whatever, right? Why don't you take the lead on this? And just give that officer, a time to breathe and time to cool down. But like I said, again, it's hard to start off when you're at 90%. Because yes, it's a job where it's a lot of adrenaline. And, we are A-type personality, of course, right? So we want the hot calls. And that's why we joined policing, because we want to go and be that, the guy that goes there and solve everything, right? Because we are sheepdogs, right? And we don't want to take a back seat, but at the same time, sometimes somebody has to recognize that for them and say, hey, all right, not today. You can be the leader or the sheepdog tomorrow, because that in itself. And then if that person recognizes and says, yeah, you know what, I was already up there, then at least we know that, okay, we've possibly prevented a situation.
Okay, Malaysia, yeah. And that again speaks to the core of the training, not only for the individual, but for the organization in general, and all of the programs that you were speaking about before, keeping our folks true to themselves as a professional, right? And how do they do that to learn to diffuse, I guess, if you will, situation, conflict resolution, right? Yeah, I see a hand is raised from Tala, and we haven't had a chance to read Tala's bio as we have yours, but we'll welcome her in again this week. As I mentioned, Tala, you were here with us last week, and we are so thrilled to have you here and part of the conversation. I see you have a question.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me again. Last week was so much fun.
Awesome.
Constable Boyd and Miss Mensa and Mr. Ingti, thank you so much for having me here. It's wonderful to see you all. I just wanted to comment on what was going on. I think I got into the middle of the conversation a little bit late, but I think as a youth, seeing everything that I do see on social media, it is hard to build that trust with police. It is difficult to really feel like they they're a pillar of protection and security and guidance and a resource in my community, which is what they're supposed to be. But when you do go on social media and you see, all these violent acts, you see what people are saying, you see, the negative image that's portrayed, right? You don't feel comfortable enough to even go up to your school officer. I had an officer in my high school, and I don't think I actually talked to her as much as I probably could have. And she's really nice, really welcoming, and really had that great communication with other students. But I think that especially in the Black community, when we see police, we automatically think of fear. We automatically think, oh, we have to have our guard up. We need to make sure we're doing the right thing, because there's racial profiling. I've too many stories of my family members and friends being racially profiled by police on a daily basis, and it's ridiculous, honestly. And I think that the kind of society that we live in right now, the knowledge is seriously so accessible, and I think we do need to go back and look at the history of police, starting in the States. You think they were, an institution built to really keep track of slaves, and if they ran away, bring them back, and so that's ingrained in our psychology. It's ingrained in our community, right? Know what it was like before, and we know what it is now. It doesn't seem like it's getting better. It doesn't seem like things are changing. It seems like, it's just changing form. It's just, taking putting on a different kind of coat, but we're still facing the same issues. Our kids are still being shot in the street. We're still being racially profiled. We're still being arrested. The incarceration rates are insane. Where's the progress? What's going on? And so for me, I'm actually on the Youth Advisory Committee for the Durham Regional Police. And that was an initiative to really have the youth in our community have a conversation with the police, because there was a time in Durham where it just seemed like youth were just being picked on, whether it was drugs or just racially profiled, or they were constantly being arrested. You just see so many news stories. And so we started this initiative. I thought, this is a great way to really build that rapport, really build that kind of communication, and build that kind of that bridge between youth and police, because we have a poor relationship right now. To be completely honest, if we see police, if we see an incident happening, we're automatically going to pull out our phones. Why? Because more often than not, if we go to court, they're not going to listen to us. We're going to tell our side of the story. The police is going to tell theirs, and it's going to go the way of the police. And that's how the system is built. It's systemic racism. That's how it's built. That's how it's been. And so that's why we pull out our phones. That's why we're always on social media, sharing things, because it's not on the front line of the media, right? They show what they want to show and then contort the story to be what they want it to be. And so that's why we have this initiative. That's why we have this youth advisory committee, to advise the institution, to let them know, hey, this is how you can get to know us better. This is how you can support us into aiming high, into being able to speak with you on a, face-to-face basis. There's no kind of, superiority and inferiority between us. We want to be able to have a, conversation on common ground. And that's what this initiative really is about. And I think that it was really interesting about, the kind of the services that you were talking about, and also Melissa, that the question that you posed, how are we going to really allow the youth to have that relationship with police? It's by building that common ground. It's by talking. It's by really pulling out the history and making it open and making it known, so that we can start those reparations in our community.
So what are some of the questions that you're asking the police to help, or what the input that you're giving that to help them to really get to know you guys? Because this, I got that would be it. I'm just curious to know, what are the things that, are important that the police need to know about the youth?
No, that's interesting.
Firstly, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Lynn. I got so into it.
I love it. No, thank you. Would this be appropriate, Lincoln, to jump in then? Or
Absolutely. Because like Tala said, a mouthful, and I'm just trying to process it all. I might have to go back to Tala and just ask back to see what are some of the things that we need to talk about. So go ahead.
Shall I read your bio while you're thinking? Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. Why don't I go ahead and do that for our viewers and listeners today? We have Tala Lumbu, who is joining us again. Very excited. You can hear her conversation jumping in with our other guests as well. Tala Lumbu is a 19-year-old award-winning African spoken word artist and social justice activist. She began writing stories at the age of 6 and went on to write speeches during elementary school. She was awarded the Town of Ajax Library Short Story Contest in 2015 and a scholarship from Congress of Black Women of Canada in 2019. In her own words, poetry and spoken word are powerful art forms that facilitate genuine human connection and are capable of captivating the soul and positioning in a state of reflection. I'm going to leave that one there. On the state of reflection, I'm going to go off to Mr. Boyd there, Constable Boyd.
Okay, Tala, and I believe, Melissa, you asked a couple of questions as to what it is that you're asking from police, and to the end, you made a point, and just kind of bring me back to what it is that you said, because you said something regarding, yes, there's a mistrust, right, and how it's systemic, and we know that, and we see that, and yes, it's very heartbroken, because whenever we do what we are trying to implement and trying to help with, and all the things that we're doing, and then you turn on your social media and you see what you spoke about, right? You see the police, and in a negative, way, right? You see them shooting unarmed Black men in the States, and so on. And yes, the incarceration rate is really like astronomically Black, right? I remember coming in as a young, well, not young, but as a new officer, and I had to do a court block of training. Okay, so I was up at the Newmarket courts, and it broke my heart really as a new officer when I went in the cell block, and there was probably, and this is Newmarket, right? So this would even be higher in the Toronto courts, but this was in Newmarket, and there was probably 65% that were Black, and it did break my heart a little bit. And at the same time, I'm walking through, they wanted us to learn all parts of the organization. So I was doing that training, and some of the disrespect that I heard coming from these guys that were in like they were in the jail cells at the courthouse waiting to go into the courtrooms. It was like, I've got pretty thick skin, but some of the things that they were saying towards me as an officer, because they recognized who were police officers from who were court security, and some of the things that were said. And when I looked and I saw that it were like some of the Black guys that were, in jail, and I thought, okay, you're in jail, so you pretty much think that you have nothing to lose, but you are hurling those comments at me. And I just kind of looked, and I remember just smiling, and I really kind of felt sorry for them. And I'm thinking, okay, you're going to have your time in court. You go to court. And as a copper on the road, I remember, like seeing some of those same guys that I think, okay, you were arrested for whatever reason. You go through the court system, and you got, a chance to leave and better yourself. Do something positive. Do not be back in police custody. And within a month, sometime less, you're arresting the same, and it's not that we were arresting that person because there was something, like frivolous, like something that we could have just looked at. No, it's you're either breaching your conditions of bail or you're committing another. And sometimes it was committing crimes against their family members, be it an assault against a parent, right? So you are a youth, and let's say you're 18 or 17 or 18, and you got arrested, and you are a youth, so you can't be tried as an adult until you're 18. So you go and you get a conditional discharge, or you have some conditions. The basic one is keep the peace, be of good behavior, right? And then they come back, and within a month or two, here they are, and they get into something, and you go to this house, and mom's got, a bruise on her face, and it's because this 17 or 18-year-old has assaulted mom. Now, what do you do in that situation? You can't say, okay, because you're Black, I'm not going to arrest you. You have to, and you have to let the courts decide. So unfortunately, we see the mass incarceration of Black people or Black youth, and it's most of the time it's Black male, young Black males. And yes, it does break my heart, but at the same time, when I'm out there and I see, that these guys, we hear a call and there's a robbery, and a lot of times I'm thinking to myself, please don't let it be, Black people. I honestly have that in my thoughts. Please don't let it be Black people. And if it's not, I'm relieved, right? I am relieved. But there are times when, you get to the scriptures and it's male Black, approximately 5'10", blah, 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 and it's 3, and it's the same description, and it breaks your heart. And here I am as a Black officer, and I'm going out to try and find, these guys that have just committed this robbery. And yes, we do work, and the work that we do, sometimes it's almost like we're doing nothing because it's coming back at us where we're going and, again, looking for the same people to go and arrest. And yes, it's unfortunate, right? And I want to commend you for what you're doing, right? And like you said, yes, there's lots of work to be done, and we understand that. And I know we work and we continue to work, and you're working with Durham police and trying to affect change. And we'd like to see that, but there is a lot to be done. If I didn't answer all of what you've asked, please just re-ask, and I'll try to get to what you've asked.
Thank you. I wonder if we can engage our other panelists as well and have them jump into the conversation with some of their questions, and then perhaps you can take a break as well and listen in and see where you'd like to engage. Alicia, would you like to go up next and pick up the conversation as well?
Sure.
Please, I appreciate that. And then I'll just, for anybody that's our listeners and viewers that are kind of just tuning in or wanted to get a sense of what our conversation was, our Afro-Caribbean Cultural Festival sponsored by the Moksha Canada Foundation. And today we're talking about lived experience then and now, and even moving forward, how we can navigate change in our communities. Today, I've read Alicia's bio, but one of the questions posed to her, but we can certainly broaden it from there. When we look at youth violence, what do you think is the correlation between access to mental health services and crime prevention was one that we posed to you on another day. So feel free to jump in on that one, or you can broaden the conversation with your own comments.
I do feel the correlation between mental health and violence in the community is very important. I don't know if you were aware, I actually was a victim of violence. I was shot when I was in grade 9. So like that question, when people ask, it's a very layered question because when they're talking about the violence, they're talking about the ones who actually committed the act, but they're not really talking about those who are dealing with psychological trauma, who have been victims or who have witnessed any type of, violence. So for me, at that time, I do believe that there are a lot of kids growing up in particular areas that are walking around that have PTSD, have, internal issues. There's trauma that it's not being dealt with at a younger age, right? And that to me is what correlates into, what happens in the future. Even for myself, I was probably lucky, based on the fact that I got shot and I survived, but I didn't receive any of that mental health. I didn't receive, support from the police. I was literally treated like, this Black girl is just normal. She shouldn't have been at the event. And, that's what happens. And I kind of was, it left a little psychologically you kind of feel alone, because again, in our culture as Africans and Caribbeans, we don't discuss mental health. We don't discuss, getting counseling or anything like that. So a lot of your feelings get pushed. So the institution's not there to support you. Your family just tells you go and pray. As a youth, you're stuck. So to me, it is important. And I do feel that, that's something that we all have to try. Like, I don't know, maybe there has to be something that's implemented, just for the younger generation now. So, and I do believe that it would reduce a lot of depression, trauma, anxiety that a lot of people are experiencing in our community, that I experienced for a long time. And, I like, as we were saying earlier, the relationship with the police based on the incident that I experienced, I was completely turned off, because it was kind of like I wasn't treated like a human being at all. And and you already feel bad that you already get depressed because you've been shot. You this is like a traumatic experience that has happened to you. And now it's like you don't know where to turn or who to turn. And if I know that if something were to go wrong, I wouldn't have went to the police ever again. Like, well, I would have just, dealt with that. But I feel that a lot of it has to do with the fact of the lack of counseling, the lack of, dealing with your personal issues and how you're going to be able to move forward. And I think that's where we get stuck, because we don't receive that mental help. We don't. So there's that thing, like people who are victims, people who are actually committing the crimes, it's like a correlation, I think, is that the fact that they're not receiving the proper help that they need.
Mhm.
That's just what I think.
Yeah, thank you.
Now,
Wanted to jump in?
may I just ask a question?
Mm.
You said you got shot in grade 9.
Yes.
Now, the detectives that investigated that incident, were you not referred to like a victim services?
No,
So
I
there were
was
no victim
not.
services, because that would be at least the minimum of what would be required, right? Victim services, and victim services would then take it and refer you to the different areas of our resources that could be of benefit. And yes, that is horrible, right? For you having to deal with that. And I get what you're saying about, mental health within the Caribbean culture, for instance, right? You'll be okay, right? Just it's not talked about, right? So if people are suffering, it wasn't something that they would say, oh, sit down, let's listen to you, right? No, it's maybe, and sometimes parents, they're working 2 and 3 jobs, right? So for them to say, oh, my daughter or my son is suffering and they want to talk, it wasn't there. So then, unfortunately, kids go and they find another way of dealing with their mental health issues, right? Because they have nobody to talk to. In school, sometimes they don't even tell their friends because they don't want to be laughed at, right? Because it was a stigma. If you say, hey, I'm feeling depressed, or I feel this, then people be like, suck it up, man, let's go play ball, or, something like that. And then they would feel like, oh, okay, let's go play ball. But when the ball's done, they still have these unresolved feelings that they haven't tapped into. But the schools didn't have that. But for you, unfortunately, and I feel it, I mean, the fact that you weren't even referred to victim services is really, you were, wrong done by the system. I'm thinking, right?
Right.
It's just my personal opinion.
And that's why I asked the question, because how can, the police force be able to deal with the bias or the discrimination? Because I know a lot of people who weren't referred to victim services when an incident happened. I only knew about victim service because I ended up working at the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board. If I never worked there, I wouldn't have even known that that company was in existence, or victim services wasn't in existence. So how are you guys going to be able to implement that? That every single time that maybe an incident happens, that these officers are following the protocol of giving this information to them, especially people who have parents who don't speak English and English is not their first language. Is there like a checklist that they're submitting once they deal with something like that? Because I was only 15 years old, so I'm sure there had to be some sort of protocol in regards to that. Or is it just it's a personal decision of what they do, because as a public servant, it's my own personal decision. If a client tells me, I'm feeling depressed or I need help with this, yes, I will go, above and beyond, go on 211, find the links for them to be able to assist them. So is that the same with the police, or?
And for us, if I may, it's not necessarily us even going above and beyond. It's a part of our job description. If somebody is in crisis, and we do have what we call it MHST. So it's mental health, the mental health unit, right? So MHS, we have trained psychologists, right, that will go out with officers. So we'll have an officer and a support worker, right? And they will go to these calls, right? And even if it's somebody that's being violent, right? If we know that, because we do have a lot of people on our radar where they're suffering from mental health issues, right? And they may be good with, like, say, bipolar. They're good for the most part, and they don't take their meds, and then there's an episode. We will go, and if somebody's having an episode, we will go, and if we have to apprehend, right, because the person is being violent, we'll apprehend, not arrested, we'll apprehend so they're not being transported to our jails, but to the hospital. We'll then engage with our MHS team, and they will meet us at the hospital, or sometimes, depends on where they are in the region, they might even come right to the call. If it's such that we need to get them to the hospital right away, they'll meet us at the hospital. Sometimes people will go voluntarily by ambulance. Now we'll have an officer hop in the ambulance, right? And we won't have to put restraint because they'll just, say, I don't feel right and this is what's going on. And they'll go voluntarily. Now, if it's voluntarily, they go in and they, wait and speak with the on-duty psychiatrist, right, or the crisis worker, then the psychiatrist. But if we apprehend somebody, that means we take physical control of them. We take them to a hospital. Once we are at the hospital, they will then speak with the crisis worker, and or MHS team might come and assist as well. Then the crisis worker can determine, or will determine, whether or not they get held for a 72-hour assessment, right? And then the doctor will sign off on that, right? And once the doctor signs off, then control is taken over by the hospital security. Sometimes they have to continue to be restrained, but that's where, so once that's there, mental health team, they arrive and they provide resources for when that assessment's done. Because once the 72-hour assessment is over, then they're good to leave unless the doctor says, you know what, no, I don't think what's happening has been resolved, so let's keep you for a little bit. Once they leave, then they have that resource, and we will have people checking in on them after that, right? So it's not that we go there and we say, okay, we're the police and we apprehend, we turn you over and that's it, we're done with you. No, because that's putting a Band-Aid on an open gash, right? We will see it through. And yes, we generate reports, right? So if we have to come back to 123 Fletcher Street, right? We know that address, we do have somebody that suffers from, whatever mental health issue it is, so that we, as a police officer going there, know that, and it might not even be for the same call, but at least we know what to expect, right? So yes, there are services, and we do try to make sure that we show people that the services are out there so that they're not alone, because it is a very lonely feeling once you don't think that you've been listened to or heard, or even people give you the time of day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Militia, I was just thinking about the evolution of the victim services itself, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and as opposed to today. And is there any difference at all in terms of how the unit is approaching things? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, you're asking, oh, in
I'm
regards,
asking Constable Boyd.
Yes.
Sort of doubling back to your thought on it not being there for you, and I'm thinking about that time period. Has anything changed from then until now? Yeah.
And 15 years ago, like I came on 16 years ago, and it was, yes, you bring somebody to the hospital, and MHS, the MHS team wasn't even a part of our organization.
Okay.
Okay, so it would be, we would take somebody to the hospital and we would sit there. I remember one of my first shifts, I remember going to Etobicoke General and sat there for the better part of the shift. So we worked 12-hour shift, and I was probably there for 7 of those hours. And I thought, wow, this is not what I signed up kind of for, right? Because police, you know, you think, oh, you're out there and you're helping people, and you're serving, and you're doing this and you're doing that. And you're sitting at the hospital waiting because it was a busy night and people are coming in with not necessarily gunshot wounds, but, you know, other traumatic situations where the 911, the emergency room, they were busy dealing with those things. So somebody that was there, and this person was, I remember it, you know, like it was yesterday, was a cutter. And he was, you know, like superficial cuts to the wrist, but it was a complete cry for help. And we brought that person there. And again, we had to sit because security will not take over until the doctor says, yes, I'm going to sign this form to keep them here. So we had to, so yes, it's evolved and we are now better served. And some of the hospitals are a little better than others. Once we go there and that's what we bring in, they almost, you know, oh, you know what? Yes, we will take over. And because we don't want to tie the officers up in the hospital, that's not where you're better served. And they will take over. And again, with the MHS team, they will be engaged, so they will be out there. Now, unfortunately, they don't work all the hours of the night. So if something like that happens, there will be a call in to say, listen, this is what we've dealt with. They're at, say, South Lake Hospital, and we need you to reach out, and they will reach out to the hospital and with the incident number and all that. So it's changed, but it's still needing some work to be done.
Thank you. Tala has raised her hand, and I wondered if this would be a time to segue into speaking with Tala as well. I'll just have you pose any question that you have, Tala, and we'll see if you can jump into the conversation in terms of Malaysia and Constable Boyd. Go for it. You're raising your hand to...
Firstly, I wanted to go back to Miss Mensah. I'm so sorry that you had to experience that in grade 9. That's a totally traumatic experience, and I'm honestly, my prayers and thoughts are with you as you like continue to grow and like honestly like build yourself up from that. Like that's so amazing. I wanted to actually touch on like the you're talking about bias, so I want to talk about the strong Black woman stereotype. And I think that's a really huge bias that's in our society. You think that, you know, you're strong, you're Black, you're a woman, like you can handle it, you know, you can take that, you're able to like work it, you know, work yourself through any situation. But then when you have that kind of stereotype that's really prominent in the society, they're not going to refer you to any kind of services or any resources because they're going to see your skin color, like you're Black, you've already, like, you can deal with this, like, don't you see what your people have gone through? And then when you go home again, you're stuck. Your parents tell you to pray. Your parents tell you, you know, you'll be fine. You'll get through it. You know, just suck it up. And I'm sure I've had that talk in my family of like, what are you going to do if you ever encounter the police? And it's just listen to what they say. Don't move. Don't say anything. Don't, you know, make any sudden movement, because that's the kind of fear that we live in this society. And so when we do, you know, are in this situation like that, when, you know, you get harmed, you are the victim. And then you ask, you know, you're wondering, hey, where do I go from here? You're kind of, you're uncertain. You just went through this very traumatic experience and you need some guidance. You need some resources. You need someone to let you know, hey, I'm here to help you. And, you know, that it's not really present. It's not really there. Even in my own high school, we did have a police officer, but I think that, aside from de-escalating the situation, when you get there, what are the preventative measures that you're making for, youth who are, in maybe violent environments, and they're expressing a lot of, violent behavior? What are the preventative measures that you're doing to ensure that it doesn't get to, a police report getting written up? It doesn't get to an arrest, it get to, jail or juvie. It doesn't get to that. What are the preventative measures that you're doing, you're implementing right now in the community, especially to ensure that the youth don't get to a point where, they're stuck and they don't have anywhere to go and they just, flow through the system? So that's one of my questions, actually, for Mr. Boyd.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So when I was on the road, and officers on the road to this day, we used to give out our business card with our contact information on there. Now, and this has been well over, I'm going to say, for the better part of 10 years, probably a little bit more, we have a pamphlet, and it's folded, and there's probably, I'd say, maybe 8 or 9 pages. And there are resources within that pamphlet that are there. And it all depends. And it could be as small as, we go to, somebody's trying to dial 911, dial 011 for overseas, and dial 911. And of course, police, we have to attend. And then just educate people about 911. It's about resources where, if you feel like you need to talk with somebody, like 310 COPE, numbers like that, all of that is listed within that pamphlet, victim services. And you don't necessarily have to be a victim of a crime to even reach out to victim services. Victim services is, a preventative method, right? It's something that you can speak to somebody that you're feeling this, but you don't think that, or again, like you said, Tala, you're at school and you can't speak because they're saying, oh, you're a Black woman, you're supposed to be strong, look what you've gone through, and you go home and they tell you to pray about it, right? So you are in a world of your own thinking, how do I deal with this, right? And as a police officer, and I grew up in the West Indian household, right, where my sister was there, and yes, she wasn't suffering from any mental health issues, and none that we've seen or she talked about. But at the same time, when I became police officer, and I realized that, because you don't see what society goes through until you are the one responding, right? So there are calls that if somebody was to tell me that, yes, this is something that happens, I'd say, come on, you're joking, right? But I saw that once I became police officer and I was going to these situations and these calls, I realized that, oh my goodness, right? There's a lot of things that, I think back and I go, wow, I wonder if my sisters, they just didn't say anything. But as I have one older and one younger sister, so I'm in the middle, but I'm like, could that have been, right? And I go back, but now I have 2 daughters, right? So they were going, when they were in high school, I was thinking, wow, you know what? No. And we always had that relationship where I'm like, nothing is taboo. If you want to talk about boys, I might cringe a little bit, but let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about whatever, because I know, especially high school, it's that time of, especially young women, my God, with this social media, going back to social media, right? It's like, oh, can't believe, and you hear them on the phone, right? Do you believe what Mitzi said? Blah, 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 right? And I'm going, oh boy, right? But I'm like, I'm here. Sometimes it's as simple as, hey, we haven't gone riding in a while. Let's make sure the bikes have air in there and let's go riding. And they would ride in. We would sometimes just go to the ice cream, plaza, whatever, and we'll go to Baskin Robbins and we just get ice cream. We sit on the bench outside and I just say, hey, talk to me, right? And I'm never going to judge. So I make sure that they knew that. So that we as parents, right? We have to make sure that we're comfortable with just saying, I have time for you. because although the system, we have the pamphlets and we have victim services, and we have 310 Copen, and we have all that, it still starts with the parents, right? The parents have to be able to make sure that they're there for their children, because if you don't show that you're willing to listen, then what's going to happen when you don't listen and you say, oh, pray about it, and something happens and it comes back? How are you going to feel as that parent? So I say it starts with the parenting. And as police officers, we have those support lines in ours. And sometimes it's, you know what, if you don't feel like, I'd see a young Black male, 20-year-old, and I'd say, listen, here's my information. Email me anytime. Nobody's reads my email but me. Email me. If you want me to give you a call, we will talk. If you want me to meet you somewhere, let's meet. Let's talk, right? You may feel even comfortable coming to the police station and sitting in an office, just us, and we talk, right? I haven't had too many people take me up on it. I probably had a couple of guys take me up and say, hey, officer, I'm just reaching out because you gave me that avenue, and can we just talk? And it's just to have that person in authority then, right? Because like you said, sometimes you would want to say, like, talk to a police officer, and you kind of were shunned, right? Because they weren't there for you. Well, I wanted to make sure that what I saw, I didn't, if I could make somebody feel comfortable speaking with me, then I gave them that avenue. So that's kind of what
Might I just ask, Alicia, if you're mentoring or advocating, if you will, for other groups, having gone through this trauma yourself, as you see sort of the red flags of support necessary, is there any way that you've been able to give back to the community in terms of your knowledge and your growth along the way here?
So the last campaign I was part of was the Violence 360 campaign. So pretty much it was explaining the story to let people understand what I had gone through and the steps that I used to, deal with, my own personal issues if the system is not available, right? And, just making sure that kids are available. And because as a radio host, what we do is that we bring kids who are, that would never have that experience on air. So instead of them having nothing to do, we would coordinate interviews with them, give them the proper experience, and also show them, okay, you guys all can't be rappers. There's so many aspects to the radio that you could do that's in entertainment. You could do advertising, you could do like the music catalog, you can be a music coordinator. There's so many things that these youth can apply. And we've been doing it on our show for I don't want to say how long, because that's going to show how old we are, but but we have been trying to push that because we understand that sometimes there's no other outlet, there's no avenue. And at first, sometimes they may feel like they're too cool and they don't want to come. But once they actually come and they see that the other side to certain things, that's how I've been able to push it. In regards to speaking, so if I do find that somebody has been a victim of crime, especially someone who's been shot and is female, I will give my information so that if they do want to talk and they have they feel uncomfortable, because there's going to be a lot of thoughts that run through your mind. Suicide, why me? I hate God. And I just want to show people that it is something that your mindset can change. You can, it can work, but you have to do it. And those are the things that I try to do. Maybe I'm not doing it as much as I should, but I do reach out as much as I can. And
thank you so much. At the when we wrap up our program, I'd love to get some contact information for our listeners and viewers where we could reach out to all of our panelists today. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
yes.
Talent, would you like to jump in at this point in terms of this portion of our program? And we could address the questions that I sent out as well. And I loved your answers when we were dialoguing through emails. So do you mind if I just read the question and then you can go from there in terms of answering?
Yeah,
thank you.
of course, yeah.
Right on. Thank you. What are some challenges that you have faced as an artist with your lived experiences? What are key recommendations for addressing change and moving forward with initiatives in our communities?
Okay, so as an artist, I'm I'd say very outspoken. I don't like to be too traditional, and it's difficult to be, a really outspoken female artist in this kind of society because I have written some pieces and people have come up to me afterwards and say, like that's totally wrong. That's not how it is, or try and be historically or politically correct, but you have to understand that art is a very free form, right? I can only give my interpretation of what I see and what I experience and what I live. And for people to really receive that, they need to be open-minded in a sense. They need to understand that the way, how I live my life and, the person that I am in this society, I see things a different way than someone else might, because I don't need to, for example, I need to be, be more on guard. I need to protect myself. I need to be more vigilant. I need to, be aware of more things that maybe another girl who's my same age as me, or maybe, live their life differently, doesn't need to worry about. And so when I talk about, racism or the Black experience, and people come up to me, Black or white or Indian or any kind of race, and they say, that's not how this society is. Do you see, how much progress we've made? I understand that, but if I still need to talk about it, then we're not there yet. If I still need to write pieces about it, then, we haven't made so much progress as you're saying. And maybe you're not living the same experience that I am. So maybe you don't totally understand what I'm trying to say, but I'm going to work to explain it to you. I'm going to work to kind of build that kind of communication with you. So as an artist in the society and being a Black female, obviously you hear everybody, if you're a Black spoken word artist, you're like, oh, she just don't talk about lady or the Black experience, or maybe she got hit or whatever. No, like sometimes I want to talk about the good things, talk about the kingdoms of Africa. Maybe I want to talk about how awesome it is to, take care of my hair or the clothes that I wear, something like that, and really lift up people. It's not all about the pain that I went through, although it is very important and it has shaped me to be the person that I am today. I don't just write about pain. I write about, the things that I've learned in my life, that I've really built up in my life, from the pillars of, and the morals that my parents have instilled in me, and the kind of life experiences that I've had. I talk about those things, but people see that. They see that, oh, so she's gonna come perform. She's just gonna talk about how bad it is to be Black in this society. I'm not gonna tell you it's amazing, but I'm gonna tell it to you straight. It's not that great, but here's an awesome side of it as well. So that's a difficult part of my experience being an artist, definitely. And I think that the main thing in terms of moving forward is dissolving the social constructs that were literally built to divide us. I can tell it, like, race isn't something that we were born knowing. We were born and then we grew up and people taught us about what race was. They taught us about what the social economic status was. They taught us about what it is to make money. They taught us all these things. And so we need to really kind of dissolve those social constructs. That's what is really barring us from making the change that we want to see, honestly, because you'll find that I find in the Black community, there's a lot of things that we used to divide us, oh, we're Africans, or we're Caribbeans, or, I have a better job than you, or I'm light skinned, you're dark skinned. Like, where does this come from? We're all Black, aren't you? Are we all Black? So it's really kind of silly once you think about it, but those are those things that are barring us from moving forward in this society. When we don't see the goodness in ourselves, because the society has taught us to hate ourselves. We weren't even considered a whole human being when America was born. We were 3/5 of a human being when America was being formed. And so we had to learn to love ourselves. We had to teach that to ourselves, yet we still live in this society that puts us down, that says aim low, because that's all you're ever going to be. You're always going to be at the bottom. No, we have to aim high. We have to fight back, against that, because it's just what they want. They want us to hate ourselves, and we can't. If we hate ourselves, we're going to see all the the flaws that we think are important. We see that's everything that's different about us, when there's so much similarities between us that we can use to literally build ourselves up. So for me to honestly move forward, we need to dissolve those social constructs and honestly unite. seriously unite, and unite in a way that we aren't trying to be the leader of anything. No, we need to pave a way for ourselves, by ourselves, because we cannot keep for a seat at the table. We need to make our own table. And that's honestly what I think needs to be done to move ourselves into society and really be able to stand proudly as a Black woman, as a Black man in the society, and say, yes, I've made something of myself, and this is my people, and I'm proud of it. So yeah.
Oh,
Can I ask you a question though, as an artist?
Mm-hmm.
What are the tips that you can give? Because you were saying that you get gaslighted pretty much when you tell people your experiences, right? So how do you, block that out and keep pushing? And what are some of the tips that you could give to other artists who really want to be vocal, but are afraid, or their story is being said, being gaslit?
Yes. Personally, in my experience, when I started writing pieces and start to speak out, especially in high school, I was a very shy and quiet person up until I think grade 10 and 11, and then I started to write more and perform more. And in my school, it was a predominantly Black student population, but the staff was predominantly Caucasian. And so when I did start to speak out, when I did start to, I got amazing feedback from the students. But then teachers who would talk to me before, they wouldn't say hi in the hallway. They wouldn't, interact with me. They wouldn't, they saw me as like, oh, so now she thinks she's big, she's talking now. It had that kind of toxic relationship, and I didn't understand why at the moment. I felt kind of sad, because I was like, wait, but you used to help me with my homework, back in grade 9, you used to give me all these resources. But back then I wasn't saying everything I'm saying now. I wasn't being vocal. I wasn't talking about my experience and what it's like to be a Black woman in this school, in this society, in this community, and what needs to change. And so when I started to speak up and be a lot louder, I had to understand that I wasn't going to be accepted everywhere. And I think as an artist, you need to be prepared to receive that negative feedback. You need to be prepared for people to come to you and say, that's not how it is. That's not how I lived it. You're talking too much, or, you're saying too much. You need to tone it down. No, I can't tone it down. I need to speak up, because if I don't tone it down, then somebody else is going to go through what I went through. And I can't have that. I can't let someone go through the same kind of discrimination, the same kind of hate that I went through, because I don't want them to come up and say, this is my story, I had to go through all of this. I want you to come up to me and say, because of that piece, I realize I don't need to conform to the norms of this world. I realize I can just be myself, and I don't need to be accepted by everyone, because I'm not for everyone. I'm for me. So that's something that, we really need to instill in our art, especially. And when I feel like, and I can always tell when someone's gonna come up, they come up with a mission. After a performance, I'll be, standing around talking to people, and I can tell that person taking a straight beeline to me because I said something that made them uncomfortable. And honestly, I aim to do that. I aim to make people feel uncomfortable, because my pieces are thought-provoking. I want you to think. I want you to say, wait, I didn't know that, or, oh, that doesn't sound right. Like, I want you to think about, that's what breaks down those barriers. And I find that, when they come and they say, I just had to say, that person that you mentioned in your piece, they did this, this, this. And also, like, the society isn't like that. Well, you know what? Tell me your experience. And we're going to have a nice conversation and reciprocate our thoughts and ideas. And that's how I, meet someone who literally wants to break me down. And then they're like, you know what? Okay, I respect your work. And that's what you need to do as an audience. You need to respect the artist's work, because all they're trying to do is show you their interpretation of the world. And they might try and put themselves in other people's shoes, and they can only tell you their interpretation of somebody else's life. That's all they can do. So when I experience gaslighting, when I experience, negative comments, I always approach them really calmly and humbly and say, okay, then what do you think? And, why do you think that way? because it's really about our mindset. Because if you think a certain way, for example, if you hate doing the dishes, you hate doing the dishes because what? It's dirty dishes. Change your mindset to think, oh, my kitchen's going to be clean after this. That's why I'm doing this, right? It's really about your mindset. When you change the way that you think and the way that you perceive things, you're going to be able to understand why the world is the way it is right now, and what needs to change and why it needs to change. So tips I can give to other people in terms of receiving those gaslighting comments and negative feedback. Honestly, understand that everybody is different and be able to have a conversation. Don't go up there trying to say, defend your piece, obviously, but don't try and be like, I'm sorry, you didn't write this piece, you're not creative, you can't do all these. No, like, that's your audience. You're making pieces for your audience to think, to be enlightened, to really break down any kind of walls in their mind and really shift their mindset. So that's, some tips I can give to other artists, definitely thinking about how to handle those difficult situations.
That's amazing. No, thank you. Does that help, Alicia?
Yes, it did.
That's amazing. Yeah. We're wrapping up our conversation today, and I wondered if, Tala, you have been giving great tips, but I wondered if perhaps you may give some additional words of wisdom for a sense of hope and that flicker of light moving us forward and making change and creating change in ourselves.
I would say, it's funny, one of my friends actually told me a few days ago an acronym that they have for hope, and it's hold on, pain ends. And I was like, wow, how come I didn't think of that? But I thought it was really profound, because just seeing the way that Black people have been treated in the society, and the kinds of things that we go through on a daily basis, whether it is, I don't know if you knew, but Black women have to work about 19 months to make the same amount that a white male worker doing the same job makes in 1 year. And that's insane. And so, you have to go through that. You have to go through trying to, go work multiple jobs and try and feed your children and try and raise your children at the same time and make sure, you don't want to get in trouble. I've seen so many mothers on TV with their, if their sons got shot, and they said, I tried to keep him out of this. I tried to make sure it wouldn't get to this point, because that is exactly, how it is right now. We're trying so hard to make sure that they don't get there, And so it's difficult. It's hard. I'm not going to say that it's a easy journey, because it's not going to be an easy journey, but we do need to be able to see ourselves as capable, as valuable, and as worthy of being the people that we can be. And being able to grow our children to let them know, hey, I'm here for you. You can talk to me. You can tell me anything you want to tell me. You can, we can talk about anything you want to talk about. Because when you have that kind of streamlined communication in your home, you're going to be able to have that streamlined communication with people in your community, with people at your job, with people where you're volunteering. That's where it starts. It starts in the home, that family unit. And honestly, it has been damaged over the years, but it's our job now to make sure that we come back together and we repair that, and we move forward together as a community, as a people, and recognize that we are able and we are capable of making the change that we want to see. So for the viewers who are listening, hold on, pain ends. This is not the end. This is really the beginning of a new chapter, a new book, and you're the author. So write your story and write it authentically and truthfully to you and your people. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Alicia, any words of wisdom or thoughts moving forward for our listeners or viewers?
I feel like Tyler answered, you stated it very perfectly, but I do want to just, really emphasize the push towards mental health and counseling and seeking that with your family, with your friends, and just, we have to be more vulnerable to it and be open to it. And I feel like that will create your whole theme, the hope, because it is a new chapter. You see a new chapter when you receive counseling and you receive an unbiased opinion from somebody else, where you can open and deal with all the traumas that you're dealing. So for me, for the audience, I really want to push counseling and really paying close attention to mental health. We have to stop pushing it aside. That's stop pushing it aside. Yeah.
Each other there.
Yes.
Wow. We'll keep this rolling here. Constable Boyd. Thank you.
Yeah, and to piggyback off what Tala says, I mean, you know, I love that hold on, right? That hope, the hold on pain ends. Great, and I wrote it down because I'm gonna use it if you don't mind. Hopefully, it's not trademarked.
Trademark it, girl. Trademark it.
And you know, Melissa, again, you know, with the mental health portion, speak with somebody. You know, don't think that nobody has time for you, because they do, and somebody will listen, right? Just talk to somebody. Don't go through it alone, because there are resources and there's help out there for you. So just speak with somebody. And, you know, as for policing, if anybody, you know, has thought about, you know, I want to be a police officer, but I don't know how to go about it, go to York YRP.ca and go to the events calendar. There are recruitment information sessions that are on at least once a month, and it's virtually. So once the pandemic ends, they'll be going back into doing in-person sessions. But for right now, go on, sign up, just take in what is there. And we cover a vast array of what policing do. And we're not saying that, you know, you have to come to York because policing is policing. But again, like Tala says, be the change that you want to be, right? So if you see that we're underserved and underrepresented, then why not put on the uniform and live it, and then try to do what it is that you saw that wasn't there for you, and help to bring that come to a reality. Thank you.
Amazing. And if someone wanted to reach out to you as a guest speaker, perhaps, or other things.
1630, so my badge number, at yrp.ca.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll go to Tala, please, and thank you. If someone wanted to reach out to you, how would they go about doing that?
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram at Black Panthers 52. I think I'll put it in the chat as well, or email me at talalimbu28@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Melissa?
You can email me, my Melizia, MELIZIAMENSAH @yahoo.ca. Or you can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram page is MELBLK Rose. So Mel Black Rose.
Nice. Well, 1,000 thank yous to our guests today. Thank you for allowing us to be vulnerable together and bridging our communities. And I'm just so thrilled to be a part of this conversation. I want to thank you all and your expertise and vulnerability and being present at the table. Thank you so much for that. And thank you to Moksha Canada Foundation and also Sunil Chenin, our founder as well. A little bit about Moksha before we go. Moksha Canada Foundation is a registered not-for-profit organization operating since 2014. The word Moksha origins from Sanskrit language, which refers to liberation and release. We believe the spirit of joy of Moksha can only be attained in celebration of cultures through selfless service of those who are from most marginalized backgrounds. We're about connecting, engaging, and empowering our communities. Please follow us on social media. If you have any ideas for a conversation, a show, if you're an artist and you'd like to get involved in any other way, just reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. MokshaCanada.com, and also please reach out to the Afro-Caribbean Cultural Festival on social media, and please follow us. We'd love to hear from you. My name is Lynn McEntee. I've been your moderator, and honored to be a part of the conversation today. Thank you for joining us.